The Jets make a major move that shocks the NFL, so you know it's a regular Tuesday around here.
Jim Montgomery was fired by the Boston Bruins on Tuesday.
Boston Celtics snapped the Cavs streak. It wasn't perfect, but the way they did it was important.
Dalton Knecht scores 37.
Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Joe Douglas is out as general manager. Firing Douglas was the easy part. Now comes the hard part.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
Robert Saleh was fired on a Tuesday. The Davante Adams trade happened on a Tuesday. And now the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas on this Tuesday leading into their bye week. On this episode, we'll talk about Joe Douglas's biggest mistake during his 5.5-year tenure with the Jets. We'll talk about a move that needs to happen this offseason that's now even more urgent because the team is trading general managers. But let's begin by talking about just the firing of Joe Douglas and some general thoughts on it. Number one, this is a move that's controversial in the fan base because there is a wide segment of this Jets fan base that really liked the job Joe Douglas did. Well, I just have to say, I think it's completely justified. Look, I'm not saying everything Joe Douglas did was wrong. There were certain things he did which were excellent. The 2022 draft class is something that comes to mind. The drafting of Michael Carter, the second in 2021, an excellent slot corner, the signing of DJ Reed. Douglas is not the worst general manager to ever hold the office for the New York Jets. But at the end of the day, his record was 30-64 as Jets general manager. He did not have a winning season. And while there were some moves that were good, there simply were not enough good moves. And if Joe Douglas was a good GM, he would have had at least one winning season with this team. He would have built at least one roster that was talented enough to win 9 games. Would have built a roster that was talented enough to make the playoffs once in 6 years. It simply did not happen. So anybody saying that this firing is unjustified, I can't agree with that. Another question that's popping up in the fan base, why now? I'd ask why not now? I think if anything, the timing makes sense. Of all the big moves the Jets have made in season this year, the firing of Saleh, the trade for Davante Adams, the signing of Hassan Reddick after the holdout, this is the one that makes the most sense to me because it's not really going to impact the team that greatly, the timing of this. If you think about this, when the Jets fired Robert Saleh in week 5, that was the sort of thing that had a tangible impact on the way the rest of the season went because you had this big shakeup in the coaching staff. You lost Saleh, who's an excellent defensive coach. The defense has never recovered. You put in Jeff Ulbrich into a situation where he's completely in over his head. That damaged the team. Getting rid of Douglas now is not going to have an impact on the team. First of all, I don't think the way the team plays changes based on who the general manager is. Second of all, the season's lost anyway. And third of all, this gives you a little jump start on the general manager search. If anything, it gives you a head start on all the other teams searching for new general managers. You can start bringing in candidates. You can start interviewing people. You can start planning how you want to move forward. So I don't have any problem with any of this. Look, I think we all knew Douglas was on the way out anyway. There was really no way he was coming back. He was in the final year of his contract. He seemed kind of checked out. It didn't seem like he was that interested in returning. The Jets, certainly based on the lack of success with Douglas as the general manager, did not seem like they were interested in bringing him back. So all this was going to happen. Does it really make a difference whether it happens now or whether it happened after week 18? I would say no. Here's the challenge for the Jets. And this was going to be the challenge no matter when this happened. Whether you fired Douglas along with Saleh after week 5, whether you did it today or whether you did it after week 18. How are you going to get a good general manager to take this job right now? Because this ownership group has been nothing but erratic over the last 2 years. And part of the issue with this team is that the owner has not let the football people do their jobs. And that's just a fact. I mean, we know Woody Johnson was the driving force behind the trade for Aaron Rodgers. And in addition to being the driving force behind the trade for Aaron Rodgers, Woody Johnson was the driving force behind Robert Saleh getting fired. Does not sound like he consulted his general manager when he decided to change the coach 5 games into the season. We know Woody Johnson was the driving force behind the Davante Adams trade. And a reaction to the trade for Rodgers with the Jets. The Jets brought in all of Rodgers' friends with disastrous consequences. The Alan Lazard signing, the decision to hire Nathaniel Hackett, last year the signing of Randall Cobb. If you're a general manager candidate, and general managers usually only get one shot. It's not like coaches. A coach can be fired and get a second shot as a head coach later down the line. Most general managers don't get a second chance if they fail. Why would you put your career in Woody Johnson's hands right now? And I think that there are a lot of issues. Part of it is, look, I don't like the job Joe Douglas did as general manager, just like I don't like the job Robert Saleh did as head coach. But these are respected people. And now after 25 years of ownership, there are enough people who have worked for the Jets who have, made their way around the league. And what do you think they're telling everybody? Todd Bowles is another example. Todd Bowles did not do a great job as Jets head coach, but a respected guy around the league. These guys have left the Jets. Do you think that they're telling people who, are considering working for this team good things about working for Woody Johnson? Do you think they have anything good to say about this ownership? Or do you think they're saying you're putting your career in jeopardy because this ownership group is very erratic? This ownership group will get in the way of what you're trying to do. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to land a good candidate to replace Joe Douglas. And I think that the firing of Joe Douglas is fine. I think it was justified. I don't think Joe Douglas did a good enough job. But I think it's also true that ownership has contributed to the demise of this team through a series of completely illogical decisions. If you were a candidate for general manager, would you want to go to a place where the owner fires your handpicked head coach 5 games into the season? Would you want to go to a place where the owner decides and dictates you're trading for this quarterback and you're bringing in everybody this quarterback wants? I think it's going to be a very challenging set of circumstances. And beyond that, I mean, it's not like Woody Johnson had a great track record before this. Woody Johnson was the guy who forced the Tebow trade. Woody Johnson was the guy who forced the trade for Brett Favre. Woody Johnson's the guy who put his brother in charge when he went to England back in 2017. And Woody Johnson's brother is the guy who fired a GM after the draft. These guys don't know what they're doing. And these guys don't know when to intervene. They take a very heavy-handed approach at very, very inopportune times. So even if they promise you that they're going to step back, they've shown that they have no restraint. You can't believe them because they've told other people they'd step back. And what's happened? They've meddled in the Jets' affairs. It's going to be a real challenge right now. And I really don't know how you sell this job to a potential general manager candidate because this is just an ownership group that can't be trusted. And further adding to the complexity of this is all these rumors that Woody Johnson's going to take another job in the incoming administration. So you're going to go through this interview process. This owner's going to hire you, and then he's going to be gone, and you'll report to somebody who didn't hire you. Who's going to take the job under these circumstances? This is my concern. And this doesn't even touch on whether the owner can hire a competent candidate, which I have my doubts on because look at the other searches Woody Johnson's run through the years. He had to bring in a headhunting firm during the search where they hired John Idzik. He had to bring in Charlie Casserly and Ron Wolf during the search where they hired Mike McCagnon. Both of those were disaster hires. So it's clear that Woody Johnson has no idea what he's even looking for in a good general manager candidate. So even if the Jets could find somebody good who would be willing to work for him, it's not clear Woody would know how to find him because everything this ownership group has touched has turned into disaster. So the firing of Joe Douglas, I think, is justified. In fact, I'd say it was necessary. I would be upset if Joe Douglas was given yet another chance to continue as general manager of this team because I don't think there's any way to defend the total body of work. You could say he made a good move here, a good move there. You could say he had an excellent draft class in 2022. That's fair. But Joe Douglas needed to go. The problem is, how are we going to get a good replacement in here? That's really difficult to see because the ownership has done everything in its power to scare away good candidates. And even if they could even if there was a good candidate out there willing to work for them, it's not clear the ownership could identify and bring this guy in.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win that first bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. on that winning $5 bet could be on some early season NBA basketball. The Sixers' first chance to turn things around comes on the road against the Grizzlies. FanDuel likes the Sixers to win, has them laying 2 points. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's begin with Boise State, who had a phenomenal day. A phenomenal day. Could it have been any better for Boise State? The Broncos, following their move up the rankings and the moving down of BYU after their loss to Kansas last week, Boise State doesn't just control their own destiny to get into the college football playoff. Boise State appears to control their own destiny to get a bye in the college football playoff. Did you hear what I just said? This is entirely realistic. So, Boise State's 2 remaining opponents are Wyoming this week, Oregon State next week. They are at Wyoming this week. They will win. They're hosting Oregon State next week. They will also win. And it'll come down to the Mountain West Championship game. They will either face Colorado State, who goes to Fresno State this week. Should be a really tough competitive game. Then they go to they host Utah State. And if they win both those games, it's Colorado State that can play spoiler for the Broncos in their playoff chase. And the G5 playoff hunt is something I've talked about pretty regularly here on the show because it's been heating up in the last couple of weeks. But it got even spicier with this Boise State revelation because the idea that a group of 5 team could have a bye in the college football playoff is patently absurd to me, but not to the people that are orchestrating the college football playoff here. That Boise State, who should absolutely be ranked, I am a proponent of the group of 5 having the ability to make the college football playoff. I am not against that. What I am against is the notion that the playoff committee just put forward, which is that the Broncos playing in the Mountain West, having the same record as BYU, deserve to be ranked ahead of them because their loss is better than BYU's win. So that's probably the argument the committee would use, right? Is, well, BYU lost to a 3-6 Kansas team. Okay, that's not a good loss. I'm not going to argue with that. Kansas is better than a 3-6 record indicates, but still, it's not a game that BYU should lose. They should absolutely be punished for that. And Boise State's loss, meanwhile, is a 3-point road loss to the number 1 team in the country. Okay, I'm not here to tell you that the loss isn't in favor of Boise State. Where is the win that matches a top 15 win over SMU, who wasn't ranked at the time, but we're watching SMU be the only undefeated team in the ACC and controlling their path to the college football playoff? Where is the win on Boise State's schedule? It was Washington State. Well, they just lost. They're not a top 25 team anymore. So that was the first takeaway I had. Secondarily, I understand that this is where the committee's head is at. Could Boise State get passed by a Big 12 champion? Yeah, it's possible. Remember, BYU goes to Arizona State this week. Arizona State is ranked number 21, which is way too low. Way too low. They go to number 16 Kansas State with the same record going into that game as the Wildcats. They thoroughly outplay them start to finish, and they are ranked 5 spots lower than Kansas State was the week prior. Riddle me that, Batman. I have no idea what the logic is there. I don't see it. I really don't. However, if Arizona State is unable to beat BYU this week, then guess what? BYU back in the driver's seat for the Big 12 championship game. And if they were to face Colorado, who are going to be favored in each of their final 2 football games against Kansas and Oklahoma State, Kansas is much tougher between those two. If they face Colorado, who's ranked 16th in the college football playoffs latest rankings, then BYU could have that win launch them forward over Boise State. Unless just ponder this. Who came in at number 24 this week in the committee's rankings? Oh, look, it's UNLV. UNLV had Ricky White, the third star wide receiver for the Rebels, on the show earlier this week. Go check out that interview if you haven't already. But UNLV being ranked is a big thing for Boise State. They should absolutely be rooting for them to beat San Jose State this week. That game is on a Friday. Don't miss it. Don't miss it, because the Broncos' lone opportunity to pick up a quality ranked win is in the Mountain West Championship game. Now, that opportunity might not be presented to them if either UNLV fails to win their final 2 games, which won't be easy, or if Colorado State does win their final 2 games. Because if that happens, it's the Rams that Boise State will face in the Mountain West Championship game and not UNLV. Then you could see the Big 12 champion, whether it's Colorado or Arizona State or BYU, go back ahead of the Broncos here. I think that's absolutely in play. But if they're able to get a rematch with a top 25 opponent in the conference title game, which is what the Broncos fans, they'd rather face Colorado State and get the revenge factor, it seems, but still. From a national standpoint, Boise State, UNLV is what everyone's rooting for. We'll just have to wait and see. But the Mountain West, this is an unquestioned benefit of the 12-team playoff, of which I've been a critic on many occasions, but we're not here to relitigate that. One of the things that is absolutely true is that for a group of 5 teams, you heard Ricky say it on yesterday's show, it's a huge part of adding interest and intrigue to that locker room. Would Boise State be pushing for a playoff spot anyway? Yeah, they'd be in the discussion, but would they be able to get there in the 4-team? No. But they're guaranteed to have access in the 12-team era. And so as a result, the Mountain West suddenly has the same level of playoff stakes in several of its games as SEC and Big 12 matchups this week, which is a crazy thing to say, but that's where we are. And so I was floored. I was completely shocked that BYU fell all the way behind the Broncos. Will they stay there? I don't know. Maybe the ranking committee is just doing this for fun. Maybe they're just looking at the current landscape and saying, you know what, we can rectify this. We can fix it later. We can put in the Big 12 champion ahead of Boise State, and the Group of 5 champion will not get a first-round bye without being undefeated. I get it. You lost on the road against top-ranked Oregon, but just remember what happens this week if Army's able to pull the upset. I don't think they will. Because I think Notre Dame is quietly playing some of the best football in all of college football right now. But if that were to happen, oh boy. Now we would have 3 teams going for 2 spots. You'd have the American champion, potentially, the Mountain West champion, the Big 12 champion. They can't all get in. The language is very clear. The 5 highest ranked conference champions get into the college football playoff. The assumption by myself and many others has been, well, to be the Power 4 champs. Well, how much do you think the committee respects Arizona State? They just gave Boise State more respect in these rankings than they did ASU. Let me know if you think that's going to just magically correct itself in a couple weeks' time. Perhaps a win against BYU will change their mind. Who they think so highly of, they dropped down behind Boise State and said, yeah, you guys have the same record, and yeah, the Broncos play in the Mountain West and BYU plays in the Big 12, but we're going to put the Broncos ahead of the Cougars anyway. I think it's absurd, but guess what? The people that are making these decisions clearly don't.
Boston Celtics snapped the Cavs streak. It wasn't perfect, but the way they did it was important. The Celtics have the belt. The Celtics break the streak. The Celtics are now the best team in the NBA again, right? That's how it works. The Cavs made this interesting in the third quarter. It was funny in the third quarter. Celtics go up 21. Jason Tatum hits a 3-pointer. You could feel the game start to slow down. You could feel the Cavs make a couple of baskets. The Celtics offense, all of a sudden, you could just tell it was different. Joe Mazzulla calls a timeout after just 6 or 5 points from the Cavs, and the Cavs go on this massive run, cut it down to 2 in the fourth quarter. They have chances to tie. They have chances to make this a game, brand new game. But we've seen a million times in basketball, if you can't make that cut, if you can't get all the way back to a lead, if you can't come back and get that thing tied, if you're making that run from the third quarter and you just can't get over that hump somewhere in that fourth quarter, then you're just never going to have a chance, right? You need to take the lead before the other team can answer. And the Celtics had their answer before the Cavs could take a lead. And it's just, they were down 21. If they had taken that 1 or 2 point lead early in the fourth quarter, I think they would have won this game. We've seen that happen a bunch. to the Celtics, against the Celtics. The Celtics doing it to other teams. So credit to the Cavs for making that run. The Celtics kind of slipped a little bit. And once you slip against the Cavs, it gets to be very, very difficult, and they can make their run pretty quickly. But credit the Celtics now for that fourth quarter. Al Horford was huge. I think the turning point in this game were the 2 block shots that he had. It's about 4.5 minutes to go. The Celtics had just made it a 5-point game. Al Horford gets a block. You come down. Derek White hits a 3. Al Horford goes down the other end on the defensive end, gets another block. Derek White came down, and the next 3-pointer just barely missed. If that 3 had fallen and made it an 11-point game, the building would have come down. It just would have been insane. It was already, the momentum was building. If Derek White had hit that second 3-pointer and you went block 3, wow, that would have been one of the all-time stretches for the Celtics. But they still managed to come back and close the door. Thank you, Jaylen Brown, for closing the door after a tough game. I'll talk a little bit more about Jaylen Brown later on, and why just as this was a nice kind of a reminder of how far Jaylen Brown has come. Not that it's not a sign, because he's already come this far, right? He's already been the conference finals and finals MVP. But a game like this just makes you think back, and you're like, wow, man, I remember when Jaylen wouldn't have this kind of game shooting the way he did. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. The Celtics didn't get a ton from their bench. Peyton Pritchard got 13 points and hit 3 of 6, including a big one in the fourth quarter. But the bench, he was a -14. Hauser -13. Nemish Queta was a -15. Queta was in there for that big stretch. It was getting relentless what the Cavs were doing to Queta. I asked Joe Mazzulla about it after the game. Basically, he said, if you're gonna trust these guys, you got to trust them through everything. You got to give him that chance, which is, look, a little bit of a confidence builder in a way, because you don't get pulled, and if you're getting pulled, if you're getting targeted, you get pulled. Maybe he feels like that can break his confidence. Maybe he felt like there was nowhere else to go. So the Celtics kept Queta in there, and he kept getting targeted, and he just kept giving up points after points after points. It was a bad stretch there. But I think that the Celtics withstood it very well. I wondered if they would have gone to maybe a smaller lineup at that point, something that was a little bit more capable of switching in that moment. But they stuck with Queta. I guess it paid off because they won. But still, the Celtics, I would have liked to see something different, but that's not the story of this game. That's just the flow of this game. First quarter was just a barrage of first quarter. Actually, they started a little slow, I want to say, in the first quarter. I think they were trying too hard in the first quarter. They were really attacking. It looked a little more frantic in the first quarter than it did. They settled down. They settled into the game. 5 of 11 from 3 in the first quarter, 9 of 11 from 3 in the second quarter. That's when the barrage really started to happen. They started to build their lead. And then they got into that third quarter. Fourth quarter, big answer with the Al Horford blocks. Jaylen Brown with the big finish. So the Celtics, did they send a message in this game? Maybe. Did they need to send a message? I mean, and there's a lot of discussion after a game like this. Ooh, statement win. The Cavs were 15-0, and the Celtics made that statement. We're still the team to beat. And yes, they did in a way, but did they need to? Did anybody really think that the Cavs were suddenly better than the Celtics? No. They were 15-0. They had an incredible run to start the season. And to be fair, they were missing a bunch of guys in this game. They didn't have Karis LeVert. They didn't have Dean Wade. So they were missing guys. They didn't have Max Strus. So important players for the Cavs. So when the Celtics play them again in a couple of weeks, that will be a little bit different. But no one sat there and was like, well, the Cavs are clearly better than Boston now. It's just that they went on a big run to start the season. And I think the Cavs have given themselves a nice cushion and will probably finish in top 2, maybe 3, depending if one of these other teams can get themselves together. But probably this is probably the top 2. It's not about the Celtics making a statement. After the game, Al Horford said, no, it's about us. And I think that's right. I think how they did this and why this is more about them than making any sort of statement, I think that's the more important thing. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Jim Montgomery was fired by the Boston Bruins on Tuesday. And
Your Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins.
I've got some thoughts here on the firing of Jim Montgomery. It was something that was widely speculated as the Bruins are in the midst of an 8-9-3 start, which isn't particularly awful. They're hovering around 500, but it's the way that they have lost some of these games and their overall stats that suggest things are really off at the moment for this team. And it all came to a head with Monday's 5-1 loss to Columbus, a team that's below them in the standings. And it's the way that they lost that one in particular that was quite egregious. And the writing was on the wall. Losing 5-1 on home ice, an inability to defend, and you were also outscored while on the power play. The Bruins have struggled to score all season long. They haven't been particularly good defending. We all know Jeremy Swayman's struggles in net. The penalty kill has been terrible. The power play has been awful. And with expectations always sky high in Boston, especially after investing quite heavily in the offseason in a couple prime free agents in Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, as well as signing what we thought would be an elite goaltender in Jeremy Swayman long-term, to get out to this kind of start where a playoff spot is already in jeopardy just a week shy of Thanksgiving. All of these things added up to Jim Montgomery being let go. Is it particularly fair? Not really. Is it the right move to pretty much keep the whole staff together and promote Joe Sacco while bumping Jim Montgomery out of the mix? I don't know if that's going to have a huge effect. We'll talk later about roster composition and whether or not that is the big issue. But don't forget, Joe Sacco is already an associate coach with the Bruins, which is different from an assistant coach. He was basically second in command. We saw him take over the bench in the past when Jim Montgomery had to take a couple days off for personal reasons. So you're essentially keeping the same coaching staff together, just minus the head guy. But Joe Sacco was already elevated above the assistant role, second in command, someone that the guys could go to, and we'll see if that makes a difference. Is Joe Sacco able to get more out of the core group that's been underperforming so far this season? Is he able to navigate the goalie rotation a bit better and give Jeremy Swayman the confidence to find his game? Is he able to get Lindholm and Zadorov fully acclimated to the Bruins system and feeling more comfortable? again, it's not necessarily fair, but the circumstances since the beginning of let's go back to the playoffs, the loss to the Florida Panthers, all through the summer. Training camp, Cam Neely has said that the Bruins have seemed unsettled since the start of camp, and that is due partly to the fact that Jeremy Swayman was not a participant because of his contract stalemate with the club. You have both Brad Marchand and now we've learned David Pastrnak, who were injured over the summer and were not able to do their regular training regimens. You have these marquee free agent additions that are not panning out at all so far. And you have a bunch of guys like Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, who have underperformed greatly this season. Now, is that a coaching tactical issue? Is it a motivation issue? Or is this team just not that good? And whoever you bring in to coach isn't really going to get much more out of them. I think it's, again, not the fact that they're a 500 team or just below 500, but it's the fact that their goal differential is near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. It's the fact that they've been absolutely shelled a couple of times this season, losing 8-2 to the Carolina Hurricanes, 7-2 to the Dallas Stars, being shut out by a team like the Philadelphia Flyers. And again, the loss the other night to Columbus was something had to change after that point. You cannot continue on without some sort of shakeup. And it's clear by some of the body language on the bench, interactions with the players. We talk about Montgomery and the screaming at Brad Marchand on the bench a few weeks ago, making contact with him on the back, benching David Pastrnak for an entire period, kind of calling out Jeremy Swayman the other night after his performance against Columbus, saying, you can't just miss training camp and expect to come in at full speed once the regular season begins. He had played all his cards. He had tried to get the team going. He had tried to call out the team's best players, save for Charlie McAvoy, I guess, who's also been underperforming. But it's clear that the body language on the bench from Montgomery, his responses after recent losses saying he didn't have any answers, you just got to pick yourself up and keep going, didn't have a real explanation for why the team was struggling and was kind of just putting the lines in a blender, which was a knock on him for his entire tenure as Bruins head coach. It didn't seem like he had the room or was able to guide this team forward out of this early season slump or whatever you want to call it. So Jim Montgomery is out. Joe Sacco is in. Joe Sacco, of course, does have some head coaching experience on his resume. He coached the Colorado Avalanche for 300 games between the regular season and the playoffs. It's been more than a decade, though, since he was a head coach at the NHL level. And he was also coach of the Avalanche team that bottomed out and subsequently drafted Nathan McKinnon. And that's where they, of course, began their rise to the team they are today. One of the big knocks on Montgomery was his performance in the postseason as head coach, regularly outcoached by Paul Maurice in those two series against the Panthers. Joe Sacco only has 6 playoff games as a head coach on his resume, going 2-4 in a series loss with the Avs back in 2010. So talk about an upgrade here. Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet said the Bruins do believe in Sacco and they're willing to give him a look here, maybe the balance of the regular season and into the playoffs if they can even get there. But whether or not he's a long-term solution remains to be seen.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win that first bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on some early season NBA basketball. The Sixers' first chance to turn things around comes on the road against the Grizzlies. FanDuel likes the Sixers to win, has them laying 2 points. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Dalton Knecht scores 37.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
37 points on a cartoonish 9 of 11 from 3-point range. Again, not from the free throw line, not from the floor, from 3-point range. Dalton Knecht shoots a 9 of 11, and he just keeps on rolling. He was hot, Andy, coming into this game. He left even hotter. Do want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't even win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Hope you picked more than Dalton Knecht. 8 3-pointers. You win. 8.5 threes. Congratulations. Hope they were juiced odds. Juiced payout.
It is, and there was a lot of stuff, and I know like the joyless among us will focus on how they didn't, they let the Utah stay in it too long and this and that.
Go find a different show, joyless
right,
folks.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Come back the next day.
Right.
Come back the next day. We want you back. But for this one day,
we're not doing that. If you are
looking for tearing these guys a new one for not maintaining the focus of the first half, ain't happening tonight, Sally.
Yeah. And it's one of these deals where look, because the reality of it is the Lakers were in control of this game throughout. They got off to a great start and
defensive start.
Right. And we'll get to that. Stayed that way throughout the scene. Like there was never any real threat of them losing this game. We're just not doing that tonight. There was a lot to like. Anthony Davis had a phenomenal game. He was fantastic. LeBron played a great game. Both of those guys had 26 points. LeBron was 9 of 17 from the floor. Anthony Davis, 10 of 15 from the floor. LeBron had 12 assists. AD had 14 rebounds. He had 6 assists. He had 2 steals. Like those guys were great. We'll get to the contributions of Cam Reddish over this course of this game. JJ Redick was effusive in his praise for D'Angelo Russell, and rightly so, for a lot of the work that he did in his 26 minutes of play. But Andy, this game is about Dalton Knecht.
Yeah,
it is about. We've had Fernando Mania in LA. We've had Nomo Mania. We've had whatever it was called when Manny got here.
Mannywood.
We're like
what they named it, Mannywood.
Right, but it had no mania. Is my point. It wasn't like Manny Mania.
It might have been.
It was, but it wasn't called that. We're like one more of these, I think, away from Connectomania in LA if we're not there already.
To put this night in perspective, 37 points. He had 21 of them in the third quarter. 9 threes, the most ever for a Laker rookie. He tied an NBA rookie record in the process for threes. He's the 4th Laker ever to hit 9 threes in a game. More from Lakers media relations department. The 37 points, most for a Laker rookie since Kyle Kuzma had 38 in 2017. Also, just for those into the history of the Lakers, that 38 tied Kuzma and Jerry West. Most points ever for a Laker rookie, D'Angelo Russell with 39. He's also just the second rookie in NBA history to record 37 plus points and 9 threes in a game. Like just an absolutely spectacular night, complete with, and just like serious for the kid having the awareness to do this. After I'm not sure which 3 it was, he actually turned around and gave a shrug, like the MJ shrug, and he earned all of that showmanship. It was just fan-effing-tastic.
The way this because since the Dalton Knecht hot streak started, this is game 5 of the something's going on. I think he might have broken out of his early season slump. We're on game 5 of that. He was, over his last 4 games coming into Tuesday night, was shooting, I want to say 53%, 53% from 3-point range in that stretch, and raised that to like 65 in this game. The impact of a player like this, because it's not just a guy who can come in and score. It's not just a guy who can come in and a bunch of shots. There is something very specific about what 3-point shooters do for your team that is different than other stuff. And it's comprehensive. You saw, and it'll even just start with energy. Like, the crowd was going insane for this. The bench was going insane for this. It picks up the energy of the team in ways that very few things do when you see somebody just rip off 3, 4, 5 threes in a row.
Anybody who has watched the Warriors over the years has seen this effect with Steph or Clay or Steph and Clay. Like, when you have nights like this where it just seems like a dude is unconscious and there is nothing you can do about it. And look, Knecht was not guarded in ways like Steph and Clay typically were, because he hasn't earned that yet.
Typically guarded at all.
Right. It is the Utah Jazz, but just the biggest, you and I were texting about this, the biggest reason, and this is why also we're not particularly mad about them only winning by 6. We both think the biggest reason that the Lakers got sloppier defensively, lost some focus, is everybody was so caught up in what Knecht was doing, they kind of forgot about the whole, we still got to play a game thing.
Right.
Like,
and it
got to actually execute.
It was 6, got to like, some of that was like late. There was, again, no real threat the Lakers were going to lose this game. But his first 2 threes, for example, I know the first one, I think the first 2 were both corners.
Yes, they were.
Corner threes. Uncovered corner threes from a guy. You've really been working hard, Andy, digging up memes.
Yes, I have. I was excited about this night.
That's 2 today that I've counted that are new to the show.
Very excited.
Really, just a reminder, you really should be watching on YouTube if you can, because Andy's Andy's working hard.
Yes, he is.
Those were 2 because Knecht moves very well without the ball, and so you see uncovered corner threes. Those are going to be like free throws, essentially. So if you can get those set up, like, okay, they're not going to guard, they're not going to be aware. Those are incredibly high value shots the Lakers are going to be able to get. The flip side is, I happen to think that teams are going to tighten up, good teams especially, are going to tighten up quickly on Knecht, because nobody likes being humiliated, even by a rookie, even one that is apparently like 62 years old, which is why Dalton Knecht wasn't drafted until 17.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only Incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Keith, this just coming out that Tyrese Maxey holding Joel Embiid accountable. I love it for Tyrese, but why does the franchise player, the Philadelphia 76ers, need to be told to show up on time for work? That is what's happening right now.
Yeah, this is a bad look. And I'm just going to read something from the story that Shams had in ESPN. In the meeting, Maxey challenged Embiid to be on time to team activities, calling out the former league MVP about being late, in quotes, for everything, and how it impacts the locker room from other players to the coaching staff. That's not good. It's really not. And again, you got to give Tyrese Maxey the utmost credit for being the adult in the room to stand up in front of everyone and address this, right? But at the same time, when we look at it, we're talking about, it said the former league MVP, a guy who's annually one of the best players in the league, like top 5, right? Regardless of position. It's not good because this team is 2-11. And what's happening is they're saying his actions are impacting the team negatively. So you're supposed to be a guy who comes out there and has a positive impact. And like we talked about before, when you talk about Michael Jordan, you talk about Magic Johnson, you talk about Dr. J, all these other guys, they were the first person in the locker room, in the gym, and then they were the last person in the gym. It's that way if you go to Roman Catholic high school. The best player is typically the guy that's spending the most time in there. And the fact that Joel is being called out for being late, that's not good. It's not good at all. Now, I'm glad that Maxey did it. I give him the utmost respect because that's what a leader does. But the fact that you have to go to the MVP and say that is not good. It's not good at all for the Sixers.
So in the game last night, Joel Embiid did not attempt a free throw for the first time since the 2017-2018 season. So does Joel just not care at this point? Did he get the MVP? Did he get his bag and said, all right, well, this is the rest of my NBA career? Listen, I don't think that's the case because conference every single preseason, Joel is out there saying, well, we want to get to an NBA finals. That is our goal. That's what we want to do. Joel, where is that mentality? What are you doing? And how does this look for the other players in the locker room? You have a newer team this year. You have Paul George. You have Caleb Martin coming in. You have guys trying to figure out their chemistry with this team. And you're going to sit here and not show up? This is just unprofessional. If you do this in any other job, it's like us having a conversation and being like, okay, well, we need to do this at this time and we need to show up 2 hours before we're going to be writing a story on the Philadelphia 76ers. If I show up at halftime of the game, I'm not going to have a story. That's not going to work. That's not how jobs work. Joel Embiid showing up late is just crazy to me. And each and every year, we have said Joel has not been the problem. It was Ben Simmons passing up the wide open dunk. It was James Harden in an elimination game taking 2 shot attempts. We have given Joel excuse after excuse. Don't get me wrong. He has battled time after time with his injuries, with the face, with the thumb. But this is not battling an injury. This is just not showing up. This is inexcusable to me. And now you're having Tyrese Maxey call you out, who's one of his really good friends. The only person that Joel has listened to throughout his career from a player standpoint that's helped his game is Jimmy Butler. So I hope that Joel takes this and actually lives by it and shows up and starts to improve. But this is ridiculous. I mean, no wonder why this team is going down the tube so early on in the season.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. And if you look at it, it's like you say, you hope. Well, I think Joel has no other option. I mean, right now, the fact that this stuff is leaking, I haven't been on social media yet, but I can only imagine the responses. But I have been, I have my phone with me, and I've been looking at some of these text messages I'm reading from people, and they're like a little bit livid over it because they're happy at Maxey, but they're livid that the guy who they feel is one of the best in the league, it has to be told to do something. Now, the thing is, Joel has to heed him because the problem is right now, I feel like if he doesn't, he could be out of here. Or he could, all the fans that adored him and love him and buying his jersey are going to be like, look, get this guy out of here. We're no longer with him. Let's just have Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey and Paul George and try to do it. And I think Joel does not want that to happen because the fans will be through with him. I felt like if he didn't play yesterday, there was going to be a lot of fans who were upset with him. And after his performance, like you said yesterday, it's one of those things. He normally does that rip through. That gets him to the foul line. We didn't see any of that, right? Mm-hmm. What we saw was a guy that either A, was going through the motions, or B, who just couldn't do it, right? And either way, that's still kind of bad when we're talking about a guy who struggled to score points, but last year he was scoring a point per minute played. So, you know what? Yeah, I think that Joel has to step up and he has to heed the advice. And it's funny that this stuff got leaked out too, because that means someone wanted it out there to let people know what Joel Embiid is not doing.
And I think people just wanted an answer, too, to why the 76ers look so bad and why did Nick Nurse take an hour to talk to the media? Was it just Nick Nurse ripping into the team? No, it was Tyrese Maxey having to step up and be the leader. And once again, I'm glad that Tyrese has that leadership in him, but you shouldn't have to do that to your franchise player. You don't see Bam calling out Jimmy Butler, although Jimmy's more out of his prime at this point, but you don't see Bam saying, Jimmy, you need to get in the gym. Jimmy, you need to show up. And this is somebody that Joel Embiid and Jimmy have worked together in the team that they played last night. You don't see players calling out LeBron for showing up late to practice. You don't see players calling out Michael Jordan when Kobe played, rest in peace. You don't see people calling out Kobe saying, well, Kobe doesn't come into the gym really. He only comes in late to practice. Joel, what are you doing? Figure it out, because if you want to take this team to an NBA championship, this isn't the way to do it. What I will say is when we look at blaming other players for Joel Embiid's lack of performance in the playoffs year after year in terms of injury, I did look at the other players, but now I'm looking at Joel Embiid to blame. And he has gone on the podium and talked to the media about, I'm tired of people saying that I don't give a lot to this city. I have given my all to this city. I've played with a broken face. I've played with a torn thumb. I've played while I've been injured. I've risked my body out there to play for the city. We're not saying that you haven't done that. And I'm sure the fans appreciate that tenfold. We're not saying that. But what we are saying now is the fans have also backed Joel Embiid. The fans have also cheered when he went down in a game, and it's year after year of him being injured in the playoffs, and everybody's on their feet clapping, getting Joel Embiid ready for this playoffs, even though they know he's not at 100%, and the 76ers probably won't go anywhere if he's not at 100%. Yes, Joel, you have had the fans back, but the fans have also had your back at the same time. And now, if you don't shape up and get better and listen to Tyrese Maxey, this city is not going to have your back, because this is a poor way and a poor excuse to go out there and just say, I'm not going to show up, I'm not going to play my game, and I'm not going to be at my best, when people know that I am the franchise player of this organization.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's nothing that, I mean, you can't argue that. And the problem is, hopefully this is a wake-up call for the 76ers. This is something that they need. I mean, I still think that Joel is not playing the best that he can, and I still think it's a result of the knee, right? I do, more so than him just being rusty. I think the knee is bothering him. But, this is something that we've heard in the past, that you heard stories about. Yeah, Joel Embiid's not the hardest worker. He doesn't do this. He's him and Ben Simmons didn't get along. It was, but now all of a sudden this is coming out, and it really, he has to get his stuff together. I mean, let's be real. He just has to, because Joel Embiid is a great talent. He's this and that, but this, if not, it could be the beginning of the end. I mean, you look at how fans are being extremely critical to him. I mean, about him. There's some people are like jumping off the bandwagon, and if he doesn't get his act together, I'm sad to say that this could be it for him. And I think that he's smart enough to know that, you know what, I need to do this. It's not about Marcus Hayes anymore. It's not about, getting mad at reporters for writing things. It's about now getting in the gym and doing what you have to do. Because, if not, you can't blame anybody else. Right now, everybody's going to look at you if this team struggles.
So the saving grace here is that from what we've seen and from what we've known, Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid seem to be really close. It's not a situation where Ben Simmons and Joel kind of had a tiff and it was a little bit awkward. Tyrese Maxey and Joel seem like they are very good friends and that they have worked together and it has worked. So Joel Embiid, you need to take this as a thought, as a conversation. Yes, Tyrese is coming out at you, but Tyrese also knows that this team can't win if you are not at 100%. And, regardless of the injury here, Keith, you look at the injury and you say, okay, well, maybe his conditioning's not there. Maybe that the injury in the knee is really bothering him. Well, his conditioning's not going to be there if he's not showing up to practice and working hard. That's never going to change if you're not showing up. So yes, you can use your injury as an excuse, but what you can't excuse is you not showing up, you not being there at practice on time, you not being there at meetings on time, because this can roll into something that we do not want to see. I need to see Joel Embiid take accountability, and that starts in the Memphis game.
Yeah, it does start in the Memphis game. It really does. I mean, he has to come out and he has to come out on fire. I mean, you got to play hard. You need to get to the foul line. You got to be on the boards. You got to be down low. But it also starts with, Tyrese said, now you got to start coming to these meetings on time. You got to be the star. You have to be first one there, last one to leave, I mean, because again, you do have, see, the difference between this team is, although you do have young players, let's be honest, you have a lot of veteran guys who played with all-stars, who played with all NBA type guys. So they're probably looking around like, yo, what's going on here? This ain't how it's supposed to be. So yeah, he has to come out with the Memphis Grizzly game. He got to come out with Brooklyn. Like you said before a couple weeks ago, if it ain't a back-to-back, you got to play. Mm-hmm. You have to be out there and play. You have to be on the floor for your team. They have to come number one. If not, it's not going to end well for the 76ers.
Tyrese, I love you taking accountability, but Joel, you are the franchise player and you need to show up to a meeting on time to set the precedent for the rest of this team.